Welcome back this evening. You've done enough for today. The lists, the plans, the noise, all of it can wait until morning. Right now, there's only this quiet space, a small moment that belongs entirely to you. The air around you is still, soft, unhurried. Let it settle over you like a slow tide, carrying the last thoughts of the day far away. Each breath comes easier than the one before. Each thought fades a little faster. Tonight's story is called The Room That Dreamed of the Sea. It's about a quiet place in an old house, a room that hums softly when the world falls asleep, and a voice inside it that remembers the rhythm of waves. No storms, no sails, just the steady breathing of water, imagined and real. So get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop, your hands rest, and your eyes grow heavy. You don't have to go anywhere tonight. The story will come to you. Close your eyes and listen. The house was old enough that the walls had learned to breathe. They creaked and sighed in quiet rhythm, the way timber does when it's lived through too many seasons to count. I'd been staying there for only a few nights, but already the place felt like it knew me, not as a guest, but as someone it had expected for a long time. And there was one room in particular that seemed to hold that feeling most. It sat at the end of the upstairs hall, with a single door slightly misaligned in its frame. When I first opened it, the hinges gave a soft sigh, not a squeak, not a groan, just a sound like air being let go. Inside, the room was nearly empty. A chair near the window. A desk with a drawer that stuck halfway open. And wallpaper that had once been pale blue, now faded to something more like the inside of a seashell. The floorboards tilted slightly toward one corner, and when the wind pressed against the house, the whole space seemed to breathe in time with it. It wasn't unsettling. If anything, it felt alive. That first night, I stood there longer than I meant to, just listening to the quiet movement of the air. And beneath the sound of the wind and wood, I could have sworn I heard something else. A low, steady rhythm, soft and patient, like the pull and release of distant waves. It came and went so gently that I almost thought I was imagining it. But when I closed my eyes, I could see it. A shoreline at night, a dark horizon, the shimmer of water folding itself endlessly against the sand. The room exhaled again, and the sound faded with it. When I opened my eyes, the air felt changed, cooler, carrying the faintest scent of salt, though we were miles from the ocean. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it was impossible, and yet, somehow it made perfect sense. I left the door open as I went to bed, so the house could keep breathing through the night. The next morning came gray and soundless. Light filtered weakly through the window at the end of the hall, soft and colorless, the kind that forgets which direction it came from. The rest of the house felt asleep, still wrapped in the slow rhythm of the night before. Only the old clock downstairs kept time, its tick faint and stubborn, as if insisting that morning existed whether the world wanted it or not. I walked back to the same room, half expecting to find it different in the daylight. But the moment I stepped through the door, that faint ocean scent returned, faint but unmistakable, like memory disguised as air. Dust swirled lazily through the pale light, drifting in quiet spirals as though caught in an invisible current. And when I listened closely, I could still hear it, the whisper of waves that weren't there. I opened the window just to prove to myself it was imagination. Cold air came in, carrying the smell of wet grass and chimney smoke. The real world. Solid. Ordinary. But the moment I closed it again, the sound returned, slipping back into the silence like it had been waiting just outside. I smiled, though I didn't know why. On the desk, I found a faint ring left by a glass long gone. There were no books, no papers, nothing to tell me who had once used the space. But I noticed something written lightly in pencil on the inside of the drawer. It was a single word: listen. That was all. So I did. I stood by the chair, closed my eyes, and let the sound fill the room. The rhythm was steady, timeless. There was no beginning to it, no end. Just the slow pulse of water folding against itself. And somewhere within it, faint and far away, I thought I heard a voice. Not words exactly, just tone, like someone humming in a dream. When I opened my eyes again, the light had shifted, sliding from gray to a muted gold. I didn't remember how long I'd been standing there. The sound had faded, replaced once more by the creak and sigh of the house. But the word inside the drawer stayed with me. A quiet reminder that maybe some things only reveal themselves to those who wait long enough to hear them. By evening, the air in the house had cooled again. The kind of cool that carries the weight of water somewhere nearby, not cold enough to see your breath, but cold enough to feel it waiting in the corners. Outside, the wind had quieted, and a faint drizzle had begun to fall, ticking softly against the old windows. I sat in the room with a cup of tea that had already gone lukewarm, watching the light fade into the pale blue of twilight. It was then that the rhythm returned. Not from outside, but from within the walls, deep and steady, like the slow pull of a tide. It didn't start suddenly, it was just there, as though the silence had been hiding it all along. The wallpaper seemed to shift ever so slightly, as if breathing. And once again, the faint scent of salt air began to drift through the room. I leaned back, letting the sound fill the space between thoughts. Each wave rolled and folded in my mind, not crashing, not breaking, just flowing endlessly. It reminded me of standing by the sea at night years ago, when the horizon disappeared and everything felt connected: sky, water, time. The same feeling came now, though I was miles from any shore. The rhythm deepened. Beneath it, I could almost make out the creak of unseen ropes and the soft clink of metal, the familiar noises of a ship at rest. I smiled at the absurdity of it, yet my chest ached with something like recognition. Maybe the room wasn't dreaming of the sea after all. Maybe it remembered it. I stood and placed a hand against the nearest wall. It was warm, faintly humming with energy, the same slow rhythm of water against wood. My pulse fell into step with it. For a few seconds, I couldn't tell where the sound ended, and I began. Outside, the drizzle turned to rain, soft and consistent. The whole house seemed to join in, expanding and contracting with each invisible wave. The scent of salt grew stronger, mingling with the damp wood and dust. I closed my eyes again, and for a moment, it felt like the floor was swaying gently beneath me. When I opened them, everything was still. The rain eased, the rhythm faded, and the silence returned. But now, I didn't feel alone in the room anymore. Something unseen was awake, calm, familiar, and deeply at rest. That night I woke to the sound of water. Not rain, not plumbing, but something larger. The deep hush of waves pressing and pulling against some unseen shore. It was steady, patient, the kind of rhythm you don't notice until you realize it's been there for a long time. I sat up slowly, half expecting to see the window wide open, but the air was still. Only the faint scent of salt lingered, as though the ocean itself was breathing nearby. The hallway outside was dark, though the kind of dark that carries its own light, a soft glow that seemed to come from nowhere. I followed it toward the room at the end, my footsteps muted against the old boards. The door was already ajar, moving slightly with each unseen current. When I pushed it open, the room greeted me like a sigh. The walls shimmered faintly, as if damp. The air was thicker now, carrying the cool, rich scent of deep water. And there, on the floor where the moonlight pooled, I saw a reflection, not of the ceiling above, but of a calm surface rippling gently beneath an invisible moon. It wasn't frightening. It was beautiful. I stepped closer, crouching down to look. The reflection deepened as I moved, shadows shifting like waves beneath glass. I could almost see the outline of a horizon far away, and the faint flicker of lanterns drifting over water. The sound of the sea filled my ears, layered with quiet voices that spoke in no language I knew. When I reached out, my fingers met nothing, only the cool air, trembling faintly. But in that instant, something gentle brushed back. It wasn't touch exactly, more like recognition. A sense that whatever dream the room held, it had found me inside it. The glow dimmed, the sound retreated, and the reflection on the floor thinned until it was only shadow again. But the air stayed warm, pulsing softly, like the heartbeat of the house itself. I stayed there on the floor, eyes closed, breathing with it until I drifted back into sleep. When I woke, dawn had already begun to climb the walls, and the room was still. The morning light came soft and golden, stretching across the floor like the tide returning home. The house felt different, quieter, lighter, though I couldn't say why. Downstairs, I could hear the faint rattle of pipes, a sound so ordinary it almost startled me after the stillness of the night. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the silence breathe again before walking back to the room at the end of the hall. It looked the same at first glance. The chair, the desk, the faded wallpaper. But there was something softer in the air now, a peace that felt earned, as though the house itself had exhaled. Dust shimmered lazily in the light, moving like the surface of shallow water. And when I took a deep breath, the salt scent was still there, faint but real. I went to the desk again and opened the drawer. The word "listen" was still there, etched faintly in graphite. But this time, I noticed something else below it, a small, uneven line that looked almost like a wave. Maybe it had always been there, maybe it hadn't. I ran my thumb over it until the edges blurred. A breeze slipped in through the window, carrying the faint rhythm of the rain outside. The sound was steady, patient, blending with the quiet creak of the walls. It wasn't the sea, but it was close enough. For a moment, I imagined the water returning, waves folding across the floorboards, rising and falling in perfect time with my breath. The image stayed until it felt real. Then, just as gently, it faded again. The room brightened, the air cleared, and I realized the sound had stopped altogether. No waves, no hum, no heartbeat in the walls, only stillness, complete and kind. It felt like waking up after a dream that refused to let go. I stood there for a while longer, not wanting to disturb it. Some dreams don't need to be explained or remembered. They just want to be felt, to leave something soft behind. I closed the drawer, straightened the chair, and let the door rest half open as I left, so the room could keep dreaming a little longer. That afternoon, the sky darkened again, heavy with a calm kind of rain. I lingered near the doorway, watching the dim light slide across the floorboards like the shadow of a wave. The sound against the roof came slow and steady, not the rhythm of a storm, but the quiet persistence of something remembering how to fall. The house sighed with it, its old wood expanding and contracting like lungs. For a while, I wondered if the sea had truly been there, or if I'd simply filled the silence with its echo. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe every space holds its own tide, rising and fading between the moments when we remember to listen. The thought settled gently, the way sand smooths itself after a wave pulls away. The sound of the rain deepened, filling the corners of the room until it felt almost like water lapping at the edges of memory. I let my hand rest against the door frame, feeling the vibration of it travel faintly through the wall. It was warm, alive, pulsing with that same low hum that had drawn me here in the first place. For the first time, I realized I didn't want it to stop. When I stepped back, the sound shifted, not louder, not quieter, just closer somehow. It wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was in the air itself, wrapped around me like mist. The scent of salt was faint again, but undeniable. I closed my eyes, and in that instant, I could almost feel the sway of the sea beneath me. It lasted only a moment, a breath, a heartbeat, and then it was gone. The rain slowed, the hum faded, and the house returned to its soft, wooden stillness. When I opened my eyes, the light had turned to dusk, and the room looked exactly as it had before. Only my pulse kept the rhythm, faint and steady. As I left, I looked back once more. The air near the ceiling shimmered for just a second, a delicate ripple, like sunlight moving through shallow water. Then it faded completely, leaving behind only quiet. Maybe the room had finished dreaming for now. Or maybe it was waiting for the next tide to rise. So here's where the story ends. You can let your mind drift now, the way the tide pulls softly away from the shore. There's nothing left to hold on to tonight. No noise, no weight, no thought that needs finishing. Only stillness. The world will keep turning. The waves will rise and fall, whether you're awake or dreaming. And this quiet will still be here when you return. So breathe slowly. Let your body grow heavy. Let your thoughts dissolve like salt in warm water. Sleep deeply, and may your dreams carry you somewhere calm, perhaps to a quiet shore, where the sea hums in its sleep, and the air remembers your name. Good night.